City Council is tackling its most challenging budget in decades. I talk one-on-one with Charleston City Councilman Harry Griffin for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Councilman Harry Griffin, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
That's right. It is the award-winning, and it is the best program in Charleston. You're the best reporter in Charleston.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you again for Quintin Washington Day in the city of Charleston. That's still overwhelming a month later.
Well, I got to give the credit to Marie Del Chapo, but I played a very small hand in it. I just have to say, you are, the epitome of what a good Charlestonian is. You constantly have the best mindset about everything. You bring positivity. We're very, very lucky to have you. And I just wanted you to know, we all wanted you to know, this city honors you always.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thanks to Councilwoman Del Chapo as well. Well, let me just dive into it because obviously City Council has a lot to tackle next week. You just posted this on your Facebook page recently. You said this quote, "These next few weeks are going to be tough on all of us on City Council." Let me ask you this, Councilman. How has it been tough on the average Charleston resident?
It's been 100 times tougher on the average Charleston resident than it's been on us on City Council. We sit there and we talk about the deficit that we've had all year and the loss of revenue. We've lost $40 million plus in revenue this year compared to what we thought we would be at, where we thought we would be at. But that is peanuts compared to the cumulative totals that all of our businesses have lost. And it's one reason why I tried to be a champion all year when we knew kind of what this virus held. And when the numbers started to drop, I tried to push very hard to open these businesses back up because I knew we were going to get to the end of the year. And just the fact of the matter is we've got about a $9 million shortfall that we've got to cover. And we've been basically given two options: furlough all the Charleston employees for 2 weeks at some point. Obviously that would be staggered in the next fiscal year, or raise property taxes and get a rollback on the local option sales tax, which to me, with all of the financial burden that our residents have felt this year, there's just no way to explain raising taxes right now. It's a slap in our residents' face. And at the same time, we don't want to furlough employees, especially sworn police officers, firemen. Public safety is our number one priority. Now, what we probably should have done is furloughed part-time employees and non-essential employees for 2 weeks during this fiscal year to try to manage that gap a little bit better. But we didn't do it. That's not my job as a city councilman. I don't make those kind of decisions. The mayor decided the best course of action at that time was to not furlough any employees. Now, as a small business person in the community, not speaking of myself, but as somebody who would be a small business person, they've had to fight tooth and nail. A lot of them are in the red and, may have gotten some PPP money, or some other government help. But other than that, they've all had to lay off employees at a time or two during this COVID crisis. And I'm sure a lot of people are not going to be relatable when it comes to the city of Charleston, knowing that we never laid anybody off. It's going to be hard, I think, for people to stomach a tax increase, knowing we never did any cuts.
And I'm going to get to a lot of those questions in just a second. Let me go to this because you also said this too on your Facebook page, and I'm just breaking it down. It says this quote, "We're faced with our toughest budget challenge probably in the history of the city." What exactly is the city's history with obviously challenges such as the budget?
The budget has never really been an issue. We've gone back and forth over small items, but we've been working with a surplus every year. We've never had issues like this. Now we've got to keep a 20% reserve, and that is how we're able to keep a good credit rating, AAA credit rating. And basically, we like to have 3 months of operating costs in reserves in case of a complete catastrophe. this is the first year that I can remember that we've had such a substantial decision to make. You know, during the Great Recession a decade ago, they did some substantial layoffs at that time. But it actually dwindled our city staff down to about 1,200 people at that time, whereas it was close to 2,000 before. Now, here we are in 2020, 10 years later, and we still haven't even gotten back to the number of employees that we had whenever those layoffs happened. So it is a substantial decision to lay people off. And when you furlough people, you know, there's always that chance that they could try to go find a job somewhere else. So there are some substantial risks to that. But I guess at the end of the day, we have to decide what is the best solution for the longevity of the city. How do we sort of make sure this city can be sustainable? And are we going to be able to keep our people that we serve and that we represent happy if we go to them at this time during the hardest financial crisis we've seen and since probably the Great Depression, and say to them, we have to levy a big tax on you? I just don't know how people are going to take this. I have a feeling, just from who I've talked to, right, my constituents, they are not going to take it very well.
Let me ask you this, because I wanted to get to that later on, but let me go to it right now. The argument.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh, no, you're fine, actually. You also said this, too. The argument has been made that if we do not raise taxes, the only other way to balance the budget would be to furlough city staff, including sworn personnel, for 2 weeks. Will the city then furlough the highest paid employees first?
You know, that's a good question. You know, if you want to look for the highest paid employees, all you got to do is look at the mayor's office. That's where a lot of the money sits. We've got a lot of people making big salaries sitting in the mayor's administration. Everybody would be impacted, you know, from the garbage men to the police officers to the firemen to planning to everybody, to the city council. We would all be impacted by that. Look, it's going to be a tough decision no matter what we do. And I'm not saying that, and you read in my post, I agree. This is a very difficult decision. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Look, nobody wishes to have to make these kind of decisions. And who would have thought that at 25 years old, I would be making this kind of decision? But that's the hand we're dealt, and we have to make a decision that is best for the longevity, the future of this city. Now, I came up with what I thought was a pretty good third solution, at least an option that for some reason we haven't even looked at. And I brought it up at the last budget workshop over a month ago, brought it back up at this budget workshop about looking at our real estate properties.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'm so sorry about the noise out here. I didn't bring my Bluetooth with me today. But you also said, too, basically the money would come from a property tax increase and do a local option sales tax rollback. Would the increase in property taxes be for taxes billed issued last month in October?
It would be based on that assessment, yeah. And it would, you know, technically we would have until, I think, September, October of next year to implement. You know, basically the argument yesterday at the meeting was, look, if we're able to get some federal funding through a HEROES grant or anything like that, we would reimburse our citizens for that. I happen to be somebody who says, you know what, we can't really base anything off of that. We need to expect that we're not going to get the money. If we get the money, great. But expecting to get the money and saying, well, we'll do this property tax increase and then we'll get the money next year and we'll pay it back, you know, that would be a great scenario. But what are the actual chances of that happening? I mean, when has our federal government over the last few years gotten anything done? You know, I mean, we have a House and a Senate that are, you know, completely drastic when it comes to party lines. If a bill comes out of the House passed, it could very easily get vetoed or turned down by the Senate. It's very, very, very tough for our Congress to get anything done right now. And so I have to expect that we're not going to get any federal money. That doesn't mean that we have to levy a tax on our people. I think we should look at a third alternative, which is, why do we have so much real estate? Why is the city so involved in real estate? We've got very expensive buildings that we own that we could potentially sell to private sector. And guess what? Even though a real estate transaction normally is just a one-time amount of money, for us it's a little bit different, because a building that is under the control of the city and owned by the city doesn't pay property taxes. Whereas when it's sold, it goes back in the private sector. Now we have a steady income coming in on a yearly basis that we wouldn't have before. And it just happened recently,
right?
And the state port authority sold their office down on Concord Street.
Right.
Now there's a huge, beautiful hotel and marina coming to that spot, and they're going to pay property taxes every year. It's a revenue stream that we didn't have previously.
And you also said this too, because let me jump right into that, because you said this too. I believe there's another way, as you just mentioned, the city needs to sell assets. We should not be property rich. What are some of the examples of property that the city can actually sell right now?
Joe Riley Park, Volvo Car Stadium, Maritime Center. There's a lot of places that we use for function halls that we do. You know, Joe Riley Park, if you put it up for sale, maybe the River Dogs themselves would buy it. Maybe somebody else would want to buy the stadium, but nobody's going to buy it and tear it down. I mean, it's a baseball stadium. It's a very nice one. Somebody's going to pay good money for it. Volvo Car Stadium, we don't actually manage it. Right. We just own it. And we've got millions, over $1 million in deferred maintenance on it. That, you know, we defer maintenance on it every year because we can't afford to maintain it. If you can't afford to maintain something, you shouldn't own it. That's my whole thought process.
Let me stop you there. What is that deferred maintenance that is needed right now?
I mean, it needs some renovations. It's 20 years old, and it needs some upgrades. You know, I wish, and I know there's really great people out there that would treat that stadium a lot better than we can. Our problem is we have to balance a budget every single year, and when times are tough, like right now, you know, capital improvements, they get pushed off. So there's only so much we can do right now. And I don't think that owning that stadium does us any good. I think it would do a lot more good to sell it, have somebody that can maintain it a lot better. We're still going to generate funds off of it because it hosts a lot of events. And so we get hospitality and accommodations money out of it. We've got concerts that come. We've got the tennis tournament. There's a lot of events out there. People are still going to come to Charleston. They're still going to patronize that stadium. We're just not going to be indebted with all of the maintenance that we have on it. It's a good asset, but it would be much better served in the private sector. And I can promise you, if you took a poll of would people rather take a property tax increase or sell off that stadium, they would sell the stadium.
And let me ask you this. If the city were to sell property, would the city have to complete the transaction between now and December 31st in order for the property to hit the tax rolls for 2021?
No, because we're working on next year's budget. So, you know, I don't think that would necessarily be the case. I would believe we would have next fiscal year to sell the property. You know, but it's hard to tell, Quintin, because I keep asking for these numbers of what these properties are worth. And I keep being told, oh, we don't really know. We don't really know. Obviously, I'm just a city councilman. I'm not the mayor. So if I ask for something, they don't have to do it. You know, I'm just one guy who has an idea that, you know, that wants to do things a little bit differently, doesn't want to tax our citizens that have already broken their backs this year, and doesn't want to furlough our employees. Although I think it's a crock of you know what to say that furloughing employees for 2 weeks is defunding the police. Those are two different things. Defunding the police is reallocating funds from one department to another. Furloughing employees because we're in the biggest financial and health crisis of our times, of all generations that have ever lived. That's not defunding the police. That's everybody making a sacrifice because times are tough. The operating budget would be the same, other than everybody would have to be furloughed for a couple weeks.
And hypothetically speaking, because it's already been abundantly cleared and made it as far as a statement from both city council, yourself, and the mayor, they're not going to defund the city police department. If they were to right, yes, sir.
And I don't think it's true to say that a furlough citywide would be a defunding of the police department. It's not. Like I said, defunding the police department would be to take money out of the police budget and putting it in another budget.
What department would that police budget money go to?
Well, the ACLU wants it to go to, affordable housing and youth services and some other things.
Is that legal? Is that legal, Harry?
The city council, the mayor presents a budget to the city council, and the city council approves the budget. So, sure, he could take money out of the police budget and put it elsewhere, but he's not going to do that. Nobody on council wants to do that. We're not going to do that. All I'm saying is the argument that furloughing employees equals defund the police, that's just not true. That's a false statement.
And let me get back, because when you talk about real estate, by selling real estate, not only will it be able to be able not to raise taxes, we will also be able to keep our sworn personnel employed. Also, government buildings are tax exempt, and by selling them to a private developer, we will get the tax revenue that we do not get now. And that's what you said on your Facebook
right.
post. Mm-hmm. If the parcel is tax exempt on January 1st and later sold after a non-exempt entity, would the exemption carry to the next tax year?
That's a good question. I believe basically how it works is when a property is sold within a calendar year, it's not assessed until the next assessment. So, like, for example, a few years ago when I bought my house, I bought it in the middle of the year. I didn't have to prove that I was living there as a primary resident until the following January, whenever they sent out the tax bills. So I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm no assessor. I'm just a forklift driver, but I just know from personal experience what it's like.
Yes, sir. And you also said this too on your Facebook page. There's no need for us to own property that makes much more sense being privately owned, as you just mentioned. What other entities that is around town does the city support that should be self-sustaining in your mind?
Look, I just named two. The River Dogs, number one. I mean, they're a baseball team, and yes, they provide a great service for our city, a really great service. But people are going to go to the games, whether the stadium's owned by the city or whether it's owned by the River Dogs. And it makes a lot more sense for a baseball mind to own a stadium than our city.
Let me ask you this. Is the Muni Golf Course solvent?
The municipal golf course made money last year. It was in the black. Now, this year, obviously, there's no chance it will, because we barely played any rounds this year, and we underwent a major renovation. But I can tell you this, moving forward, especially with the decisions that we've made, which would be we raised the fees a little bit to get them in line with other golf courses around the area. The Charleston Municipal Golf Course, with these renovations, will be the best bang for your buck golf round anywhere in Charleston County. And it will make money. The way that it performed very well last year in 2019, obviously with the pandemic and the renovations, we already knew we were not going to make money this year in 2020. But with all of these capital improvements that we've made to that property, this is going to be a really great place to play golf, and it will do very, very well. Other golf courses around the Low Country and the Tri-County area have all had the record number of rounds. Because you're outside, you can socially distance and play golf. Golf is making a big comeback due to COVID.
And for those people out there that don't know and are watching Quintin's close-up right now, what exactly were those capital projects for this particular golf course?
We redid we pretty much redid the whole course, to be honest with you. We redid the driving range. We redid all the bunkers, all the fairways, all the greens. I served on the committee to hire the renovations company. They've worked at the Masters. They've worked up and down the East Coast at the best golf courses around. this golf course is going to be amazing. I'm very, very excited. I also serve on the golf commission, and I play a little bit of golf. I'm not any good, but I have fun. That's kind of like my one thing that I do where I can just take my mind off everything else. So I'm a golfer. I'm somebody who enjoys the game, and I am ecstatic about how great this course is going to be.
And let me go back to your post, because you said this earlier about the property tax increase. You say basically the money would come from a property tax increase and do a local option sales tax rollback. So let me ask you this: the revenue, wouldn't be seen until late next year or even 2022 in your mind?
No, we would. Well, so we basically we take our budget. We project a lot in our budget. Most everything's a projection because we don't really know how many business license fees we're going to collect. We don't really know exactly how parking is going to do. We don't really know how all of these things are going to do. But we have projections, and they're usually very, very, very close to actual. This year, we were projecting that we would be fine. We'd have a little surplus. We'd put it in reserves. We'd be good to go. But obviously, when the pandemic hit, that's when we saw the great reduction in business license fee and parking and accommodation and hospitality tax. And so then we had to audible. We had to use a lot of our reserves to kind of get as close as we could. And then we were left with this $9 million. So that's when you get down to the nitty gritty. I had to go find $9 million. Now, some people say tax increase. Others say furlough. Others are still fine-tooth combing the budget again, trying to find some more money. I'm saying let's get these appraisals together and find out if we can sell some real estate. So it's far from over. We're all still looking at different things. We're going to have one more budget workshop next Tuesday at 2 p.m. And then we'll have city council directly after it. We will have our first reading on the budget, right? I believe on December 1st. Let me check my calendar real quick. Yep, December 1st. So we have one more budget workshop next week, and then we'll get going.
Yes, sir.
It has to pass 3 readings in order to be passed.
That's exactly right. How would then the annual audit for the city look?
Well, we just had our annual audit just a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, a couple of months ago, and our audit went very well. We maintained our AAA credit rating. Everything's good there. And depending on how next year goes, I think we have the best CFO nationwide, Amy Wharton. She does a phenomenal job. She works harder than anybody I've ever met. And I just can't say enough how much I appreciate her. We're in a tough financial position, but we couldn't have a better person leading that department in this city.
And let me go back to that post one time again. It says this: basically, the money would come from property tax increase and do a local option sales tax rollback. Would those revenues be usable until late 2022?
That's a good question. I'm sorry I didn't get to that before.
Well, no worries.
Basically, we would have, I believe the way the mayor put it yesterday, it would be late 2021 that we would have, we don't necessarily have to use those funds until then. So if we were able to get some federal help before then we would be able to, pay back our citizens that invested in this tax increase.
And would this local option sales tax credit have a set limit that must be returned?
I believe that if we were able to get the money from the federal government, now this still isn't set in stone, so this was just discussed at the meeting just yesterday. I believe that depending on whatever money we were able to get from the federal government, and the mayor believes even if we only got 20% of what the HEROES grant that's being talked about, even if we only got 20% of that, it would be enough to pay back our residents in full, whatever this tax increase is going to be for 2021.
And can the local option sales tax funds, and I know this might be going backwards, but can the local option sales tax funds be used to reduce property taxes?
Well, we've never really rolled back. I'm sorry, it looks like our connection's a little unstable. You froze up on me.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Hello, can you see me?
Oh, yeah, I can see you. I can hear you. I can see you and hear you.
All right, we had a bad connection there.
Yeah, I can hear you and see you. Yeah, go ahead.
I can't. You're frozen. But anyway, what we're talking about. I'm just going to finish this statement. I'm still looking at you,
Sure.
stuck with a smile on your face at least.
Oh, okay.
But basically, Quintin, we've never had to do this before with the local option sales tax, and it's made a lot of council members very weary about that. So we would rather not touch that if possible.
And traditionally, I know the city has used the local option sales tax revenue from both the property tax fund and the revenue fund to provide property tax credits. Would the proposal be to reduce the credit from the revenue fund by at least 50%?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And let me ask you this too, Harry. What were those property tax credits in 2019?
Honestly, that's a great question. I believe that basically a lot of people are kind of upset about how their properties were assessed. We had a big assessment this year, and a lot of people's taxes already went up on the county side. So basically, what this property tax increase is, we would be moving our millage around a little bit. We'd be tinkering with our millage. It would be about 1.5 mils.
Right.
So and then if you add that in with the local option sales tax increase or tax, basically, or the rollback, I should say, you're looking at about a 6 mil increase in taxes, which is a big one. 3 mils is usually eye-opening, but six is huge.
Sure.
So we're talking about a substantial tax increase, and we just have to be sure that's the right way to go about it. I'm just not sure of that yet. I'm not sure. I'm very unsure about raising taxes. I'm very unsure about furloughing employees. But at the end of the day, we need to look at every single option. We need to make the choice that's best for the longevity and prosperity of the city and all of the people that live in this city. And ultimately, we have to do a better job of making sure that we're very fiscally responsible with our money every year. Because you look at example, you remember Spring Fishburne,
right?
It was 154 and it ended up being over 200 million. Whenever these projects come in way over what we expect, we have to end up pulling money out of reserves, and then we get in the situation. It wasn't a big deal then because we had it, but now when we need it, we don't have it anymore. So we've got to be very, very fiscally responsible. We got to be very tight with our money going forward.
Who on Charleston City Council is in support of a tax increase right now?
I can't tell you. I just know what I believe. I stated my case yesterday, loud and clear. We need to be looking at other alternatives.
And can local option sales tax funds be borrowed to pay for other city services or projects and be paid back later from the general fund?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Local option sales tax has been a great thing for us, and it's helped a lot of our residents out. But, I don't know all of the ins and outs of exactly how it can be used. The state mandates exactly how we can use that money. But I'll make sure that at our meeting on Tuesday, I bring that up and we get an answer to that.
And let me go quickly to the John C. Calhoun statue. How much money of the city's money was used on the Calhoun statue?
Well, in the first round, it was about $150,000, but they got $100,000. I think it was $138,000, and we had a $100,000 donation. So it only cost the city about $38,000. The second round was another about $140,000, and that came out of the city's pocket.
And how much more money from the city was paid towards this base?
I have no idea. All I know is that we awarded a bid to go in and take down the base. I know they're looking for a time capsule.
Right.
I really don't know. I believe that the state had made an inquiry about it getting into the state museum.
Oh.
I actually think that at one time, the state treasurer may have even spoken to the mayor about relinquishing it over to the state. And apparently the mayor wasn't in favor of that. So I don't know exactly what's going on with the Calhoun statue. Obviously, my attention right now has been turned towards the budget and making sure that we have a balanced budget going into next year. But I can promise you I'm not going to let that go away.
Now, with that bid, how much was that bid?
I think it was 120, 130,000 for, oh, you're talking about to buy the, I don't know what the deal was. I believe the state wanted it to be gifted. I don't think they wanted to pay for it. You know, the city shouldn't really be all that weary about it getting into the state's hands. I mean, we might own the statue, but we certainly, you know, have made some pretty serious decisions to take it down and put it somewhere. And if there's somebody out there that has a successful place to put the statue, we need to entertain that, and we need to take it very seriously.
Now, with that base, I think you were talking about the bid with the base. Am I correct?
Yeah.
How much was that bid?
And that's what I was saying. It was around the same amount of money as the rest of the statue.
And was city council informed about it, or was this another mayor's decision?
It was, well, we voted on it to remove it. But, I mean, basically, without the statue there and just having the base, and the WLI is pressuring us, they want us to get it off their property, you know, our hands are tied at that point. We had to make a decision.
Make a decision. What other decision should be made about the base right now?
I say find the time capsule, get it into the same possessions as the statue, and all of it needs to go to a museum somewhere if one's available as soon as possible.
And let me ask you this: as we go back over here to, for instance, I'm sitting right behind King Street right here. But when will the city fully be back open for business so that the city can start making money and getting a revenue?
If it were up to me, yesterday. If it's up to the powers that be, I wouldn't expect it to be fully open this year. You know, I wanted to meet in person. I made a big deal about it. We're not going to meet in person this calendar year. So if we're not even willing to meet in person, I have a hard time believing the city's going to open up. You know, but for some reason, we're still having ribbon cuttings all the time. I guess ribbon cuttings are more important than meeting in person or getting this city revitalized.
And you said it, you told the mayor, listen, I don't want to be a virtual councilman.
No, I hate this right here. I mean, I want to be sitting next to you, and you know, I will, hopefully you and I can get together and do it in person the next time. That would be great. We can socially distance or whatever, but you know, I didn't sign up to be a virtual councilman, and neither did any of the others. You know, none of us signed up for a pandemic, which is what he said back to me, which is true. But as long as we are willing to confuse our residents about what direction we're really willing to go, we're not doing them any good. You know, we have some things open and some things closed. We've got some things that are willing to meet in person and some things aren't. It's a very confusing time to live in the city of Charleston.
In what direction is the city going when it comes to the smokestacks where I live on the east side of Charleston?
They formed a task force, and they had their first meeting, I believe, today. So I think they're going to be making some recommendations to the mayor, and I look forward to seeing what those recommendations are. Have you been able to look at anything so far? My preference is, you know, the cost is ridiculous. I mean, to even save half is going to be in the millions. To save the whole thing is going to be in the millions, or to tear them down is going to be less than $500,000. So if we don't get some private donations, me being a fiscally responsible guy, tends for me to lean towards the tear them down argument.
Harry J. Griffin, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's always a pleasure to be on the best show in town. Thank you, Quintin.
Thank you. Absolutely.